support Austin writers. There's some wonderful books here, literary memoirs at the back. So we'll take a quick break and after 4 readers, and you guys can peruse the goods. Finally, I want to thank the writers who've allowed me to be a part of bringing their work to the page. It's an honor and it's a trust, and I'm humbled to be a part of their process. I'm talking here of the writers are Carrie Kenny, Lauren Malvern, Jennifer Patterson, Gretchen Phillips, Robin Storydunn, Lizzie Burr, Beth Rimsberg, and Nancy Woodburn. They have led with curiosity and have been open to discussion of their work and to suggestions, and they've worked really hard for the last 4 months. So, I just want to say a couple things really quickly before we start about memoir, particularly literary memoir. So, where memoir is concerned, there's writing about the past, and then there's writing through the past from the perspective of the present. And the writers you're about to hear concern themselves as much with exploration as they do with recounting of the past. They are looking for the hidden meaning of the past, not what it was, but what it continues to be and how it lives inside them and informs who they are now. Early on in Annie Dillard's Pulitzer Prize winning Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, Dillard quotes a neighbor as saying, "Seems like we're just set down here, don't nobody know why." I love that line. Literary memoir often circles around these kinds of questions without attempting to offer any kind of pat answer. It also poses a whole different set of questions, if we're lucky. Ones that spring from the quirks and obsessive rumination of the writer's mind. The writers in this workshop have been fearless in putting these questions down on the page. Our first reader tonight is Carrie Kenny. Carrie is a writer and photographer and the co-director of Prizer Arts and Letters, a nonprofit community art space in East Austin. She is at work on a personal narrative that blends theory, memoir, and photography. Please join me in welcoming Carrie Kenny.
Let me just say thank you to Donna. I've worked with Donna in the past, and it's always an honor to get her insight and have her feedback. I also feel blessed to have worked with the other 7 women in the group. It really has been a wonderful experience, and I thank all of you for making it so. Anyway, onward. This is a piece out of a longer memoir I am in the process of writing, and I appreciate you all listening to. When I was a child, I loved lemons. I also loved cream, and no one told me I couldn't put both in the same cup of tea. Why not mingle the flavors? It made sense to me, but the result, of course, was a curdled mess. It seemed I had to pick, and cream won out. I think my infatuation with tea started during our trips to Hawaii. Up until the time I was a teenager, my grandparents lived there half the year and flew us out for Christmas. The resort we stayed at was beautiful, but the best part about it was that my brother and I were allowed to run free in this paradise by the ocean. Each morning, I made sure I was on the beach in time for tea. Tea was served under a large white open-air tent. I would walk up with my towel wrapped around me, still wet from the ocean, and make my own cup. I was surrounded by tea and coffee drinking adults, but none of them were mine. This was a solitary pleasure. If I'd gone to Hawaii when I was just a little older, I think I would have had a hard time taking in the wonder of this ritual. If I had been older, my guilt, as steady as my breath, would have gotten in the way. What right did I have to such luxury when others had so little? Thoughts such as this would have crept in like lemon, swirling around, refusing to mix. As I got older, my feelings of guilt grew along with an accompanying fear. In The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin writes about how, at the age of 14, he became, quote, profoundly afraid, and that this fear pushed him into the seeming safety of the church. He was aware that as an African-American teenager, he needed a, quote, gimmick in order to survive. He writes, "It was my career in the church that turned out precisely to be my gimmick." I cannot compare my life as a white teenager born into privilege to the very narrowing of possibilities and threat to his life Baldwin was facing. But there's always been something in the way that he writes about needing a gimmick that makes sense. About his 14-year-old self, he writes, "As I look back, everything I did seems curiously deliberate, though it certainly did not seem deliberate then." At 14, I too was afraid. Of what exactly, my teenage self could not have told you. I don't even know if I could have articulated that what I was feeling was fear. But I can see it now, in how I held my body, in how I strived to please, in how hard I worked, in how guilty I felt. Growing up in a city as racially and economically segregated as Washington, D.C., it is hard not to be aware of the disparities around you. I responded by starting to volunteer more and more. I helped out at a soup kitchen, became head of volunteering at my school, and organized fundraisers for, quote, worthy causes. My feelings of guilt fueled a lot of these activities, but there was something else at play too. I was in the process of molding an identity and striving to be, quote, good, in the way that females who focus on the needs of others are considered good. This very process of consciously creating an identity holds within it a falseness. On some level, I knew I was creating a role for myself that was, quote, safe. This role could be its own kind of gimmick. When I got to college, I simply increased my volunteer and social justice efforts. And for a while, all of this activity worked. But then my body and a deepening sense of loss began to catch up with me. I'm thinking of a specific moment when my mind began to loosen. At home from college for winter break, I had had some high school friends over for a visit. After they all left, I went upstairs to lie down. I stretched myself out on a couch that was dusty orange in color and covered with maroon and white flowers. Slowly, I began to trace the little green stems of the fabric with my index finger, going from bulb to finish and back again. The movement was easy, automatic, but at the same time, my mind was at work on something far less familiar. Now I wonder, what took my brain so long to form the word, to actually bring it to the fore? And why did it happen then, in that quiet moment in my parents' house? It makes me think of the many times I would come home from college and immediately get sick, as if my body had gotten the message that it was okay to relax now that the work was done. The body can't keep up its defenses forever. There must be a break, especially when it is being hit by something strong. In that room, I was safely away from college and, more importantly, from the woman with whom I was falling in love. It was then that the word slipped in, lesbian. You are a lesbian, my mind said to me with paralyzing clarity. I stopped my shadow drawing on the couch and lay there motionless, pinned down by fear. It was as if a line had been drawn. There was the Carrie before the word and the Carrie after. Only minutes before, I'd been my old self, laughing and recounting funny stories. But after, I had the sense that something had changed, that I would never be able to inhabit that house and those relationships in the same way. For now I had a secret, one that was bigger than any I'd ever had before.